Hi there, my name is Kiana and I am one of the Speed Art Museum's teaching artists with the Art Detectives program. I'll be taking you on a virtual journey through our education collection. Before we get to see those objects, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Have you ever been to the Speed Art Museum in person before? And if you haven't, have you ever been to a place like the Speed Art Museum? Think about the objects that you saw there. Were there paintings or sculptures? Today, I'll be giving you some examples of how you can be an art detective with me. With these objects, we will be doing three things. The first thing is that we will observe these objects. So we'll just look at it and on first glance, think about some different things about it, some of the first things you notice. The second thing we'll be doing is we will investigate the object. I will be handling the object for you to see, and we'll be looking at tiny details. You will be able to look at this object the same way our art handlers and curators do when they put them in our museum. And the third thing we'll be doing together is discussing. I will ask you some questions about the objects that you saw, and we'll talk about how they were made, what they were made of, what they were used for, where they were from, things like that. Before we get to see those objects, you might be wondering why I'm wearing these gloves. That is because I will be physically handling the objects, and if I wasn't wearing the gloves, the oils on my hands could damage the objects. It could break them down over time or change the paint color. So we put on these gloves when we're handling objects in the museum to keep them safe. Okay, let's get started. Today, we will be exploring our STEAM crate. The word STEAM is an acronym, which means that each letter individually represents a word. The very first mystery we will solve is what each letter stands for. S-T-E-A-M. Does anyone have any ideas? The S stands for science, the T, technology, E, engineering, A, art, and M, math. We will be observing obsolete technological artifacts, which just means that we do not use these objects anymore, or we have created objects that work a little bit better for our modern world. We'll be taking a look at the design and the function of these objects. You're really going to like time traveling with us today, art detectives. The first objects that we'll be exploring are these. Now this is one that you may have seen before. But have you ever seen this object before? This is called a floppy disk. With these two objects paired together, what do you think they're used for? This one, if you've never seen it before, is called a flash drive or thumb drive. We still use these today. But the floppy disk was used primarily between the 1970s and the 1990s. And both of these objects are used to store data. You can put pictures, videos, documents, and all kinds of things to save storage on your computer on these. Now, if we take a very close look, we can see the amount of storage that this holds. This floppy disk holds 1.44 megabytes of data. And this thumb drive holds 16 gigabytes of data. Now, is a gigabyte bigger or smaller than a megabyte? That's right, a gigabyte is bigger. You would need 711 of these just to make 1 gigabyte. But this is so much bigger, right? It's very interesting to notice the difference in design as far as the shape from then to now. And even a little bit different now, a lot of our storage is done digitally, right? On things like Google Drive or iCloud. So you may not even see a physical object that holds your storage. The next objects that we will be exploring are these. Have you ever seen anything like this before? This may look a little bit like a CD to you, but it's much bigger and much different in texture, right? This is a record from 1901, and it is made out of resin. Now these days, our records are made out of vinyl. It's a lot softer. What do you think these objects are used for? That's right, these objects are used to listen to music. Now the record is pressed, and if we look very closely, we can see these grooves here. And these grooves are where the information is. And when sat in a record player, a tiny needle goes in between each one of these grooves, and as it spins, it gives us the information or the music. Now these days, records have two sides, and usually there will be a few songs on this side and a few songs on this side. However, this one is just a single, meaning one song on one side. This next object that came after the record is a cassette tape, also used for listening to music. Now, if you notice this tape inside here, now that is magnetic. And when placed in a cassette player, this is where the information is stored. How do you listen to your music today? The last two objects we will be exploring together are these two things. Now you can already tell this one's a little bit clunky, right? And this one may be one that you've seen before. That's right, these are two different ways that we can or used to make phone calls. This one is called a rotary phone because of the rotary numbers here. And you may also notice this cord. This would originally be plugged into an outlet in your home called a landline, and that's where we would get our service to make phone calls. Now with cell phones, the service comes from towers, right? So we can make a cell phone call anywhere. Notice the difference in these two things from then to now, or before now, because even today our cell phones look much different. This one does not have the capability to get on the internet, or if you notice, it also cannot take pictures. Now these are the phones that came before the ones we know now. Together, we learned about 3 different sets of objects. You saw 2 objects that stored information, 2 objects that played music, and 2 objects that made phone calls. What one object do we use today that combines all of these things? That's right, it's our smartphones. Today, you are going to create a phone of the future, a prototype, which is a simple model that lets you test out your idea. You will be drawing what your future phone will look like, and then telling a few facts about your future phone. For this, you will need a pencil, colored pencils, crayons, or markers, and perhaps a pencil sharpener. You can find the template for your future phone design on the Art Detectives page on the Speed Art Museum's website. Great job, Art Detectives! I hope you learned something new and you have some ideas for creating your own work of art inspired by the objects you saw today. If you enjoyed observing and discussing these objects, please come visit us at the Speed Art Museum, where you can see objects from all around the world. Thank you so much for being an art detective with me today.